Natalia Bonner. Welcome to Let's Stitch a Year of Stars Piecing Edition. I'm so excited to share with you today block number 1, the combination star. I am going to be making this block using just 3 fat quarters. It's going to be so much fun. I can't wait to share my process with you. If you do want to sew along with these, you can pick up the full step-by-step pattern over on our website, pieceandquilt.com. Now, I am sewing here today on my adorable little featherweight machine. The biggest question I get about this machine is, where did you get that machine? I have all the details about my machine in the description below, so make sure you check that out. Alrighty friends, once you've got everything all cut, we're ready to start sewing. So now I'm going to place one gold 5 3/16 inch square and one pink 5 3/16 inch square right sides together. I have already marked the markings on the back side of these. So now I'm just going to sew 1/4 inch on each side of that marked line. You can see here that I like to use a scant 1/4 inch, which means a pretty small 1/4 inch, because I can definitely go back and square up my blocks later if I need to. Once I've stitched on each side of that line, now I'm going to trim right on that marked line. From there, now I'm going to press, and I'll press towards the dark. I like to spray a little bit of flatter on there just to help set my seams and end up with a nice crisp block. Now I'll have 2 half square triangle blocks. I'm going to place those blocks right sides together so that the seams butt up right next to each other. And then I'm going to mark a diagonal line through those blocks. Once I have that diagonal line, then I'm gonna go back to the machine and stitch 1/4 inch again on each side of the block. You can see here as I'm stitching, I like to fill and make sure that those seams are just butted up right next to each other. That way I'll know that I'll have a nice center point. I'll clip my threads. Now I'm going to trim on that line one more time. And then I'm going to press those again. And there we have it, a great little hourglass block. Now at this point, I would trim that block down to 4.5 inches, and I'm going to repeat that process, making 4 of these hourglass blocks. All right, let's move on. Now I'm going to grab my blue 2 7/8 inch triangles, and I'm going to sew those to the sides of the pink 3 5/16 inch squares that I've already cut. Now with blocks like this, you'll notice that I want to line up the triangle because the triangle is obviously bigger than the square. I'm going to line that triangle up so that there's about 1/4 inch that hangs off each end of that triangle. Now I'm going to do this on 4 of these blocks, so I'm going to chain piece this. lost my scissors. Oh, there they are. So once I've sewn those first 4 on one side, now I'm going to sew again the same triangles to the opposite side of that pink block. Now I'm going to press all 4 of those blocks. Again, make sure you press towards the dark. Now that I have 4 of these units created, I am going to sew those triangles on the opposite sides. Now, if you're struggling seeing where to line up these lines, you can see here, I am making a V that is 1/4 of an inch in. So you could mark the center and find that center point, but another option is to just line it up so you have that V. Your needle should fit right in the center of that V. Now that I have those sewn on one side, then I'll head back and stitch the remaining triangles on the opposite side. And one more. Now that I have all these sewn, I'm going to press them, and then if I need to, I can square them all up to 4.5-inch squares. And there you have it. You should have 4 of these square in a square quilt blocks. Now I am going to repeat this process one more time using, again, a pink square and sewing gold triangles to the outside of that. So now we'll repeat that process one more time using yellow triangles and a pink center. Sewing to the 2 opposite side first, pressing, and then sewing to the remaining 2 sides. And remember, press towards the dark. And now we'll sew to those 2 remaining sides. And now one final press. Don't forget, you're going to want to square this block up to 4.5 inches once you're done. All right, now that we've got all of our units made, let's put this block together. We're going to sew 2 rows that are exactly the same, the top and bottom rows, and then we'll sew the center row, which will be different. Once we make those 3 rows, then we're going to sew 3 rows together and we'll have a fabulous block. We'll start out using one of the hourglass blocks and then 2 of the, whoopsies, square in a square quilt blocks. We'll sew those square in a square quilt blocks to the outside of those hourglass units. Make sure that you're sewing it so that the hourglass unit has the yellow on the top and the bottom. Now, because I am making 2 of these units, I am going to do a little bit of chain piecing here. And while we're at it, let's just finish that center row. So we're going to again grab that center block and we'll also use some of the hourglass units and sew those to the outside, making sure they line up just like that. Now that we've got one side sewn, let's again repeat that process and sew to the remaining 3 sides. Now, if you wanted, you could go through and use pins and make sure everything is precise and accurate, but you guys, it's just not me. I don't use pins. So this is really how I sew. And finishing off that center unit, placing the two that I have with the remaining one on the opposite side. Now that I have all three of those strip sets, those units completed, I'm going to sew them together. But first, we want to make sure that we press. Now, I like to press towards the dark, so with these two units, I'm going to press towards the dark. With this center unit, I'm going to press towards the center. So press towards the outside and then to the center. Okay, now I have those three units all sewn. I should have two units that look like this, and then I should have a center unit that looks like this. Now just sew those three rows together, press, and you'll have a fabulous block. As I'm sewing these together, you'll notice that I want to line up my seams. I want them to butt together really nicely. The way that I've pressed them, they should butt up perfectly. Well, almost perfect. I'm not perfect. Now, once I have that final stitch sewn, I'm again going to press my block. You can press those seams now any way you would like. Let's press those seams and then I'll show you the block. And there you have it. Let's Stitch a Year of Stars, block number 1, the combination star. I love how this block turned out. Now, if you haven't yet joined our Facebook community, we'd love to have you join. Let's Stitch a Year of Stars on Facebook, where we have monthly giveaways and prizes, and it's so much fun just to share your progress with all the other quilters in our group. Let's get stitching.